Hey guys, welcome to another episode of All Around Hockey, YouTube channel for the All Around Hockey fam. Today we're continuing on with our series looking at all 32 NHL teams and previewing them for the upcoming 2026-2027 season, where we use our good friends Puckpedia here to look over the roster, look at and also possibly look at what moves could possibly still be made this offseason as the offseason started to die down. And then we also use Hockey Reference to look over and see what the stats were from last season. This episode, we're going to focus on the Edmonton Oilers. Our last episode, we did the Detroit Red Wings, and we've also done like teams like the Ducks, Bruins, Sabres, Blackhawks, Hurricanes, Flames, Stars. If you haven't watched those, haven't seen those videos already, please go check those videos out as well. Really been enjoying making this content. Hope you guys have been enjoying watching it as well. So the Oilers are a pretty interesting team. They've made some noise this offseason and maybe not the best kind of ways, but also some of their team is still looking for some more moves to make. So this should be an interesting episode. We're going to start looking at what the current lineup looks like. According to Puckpedia, they got Ryan Nugent-Hopkins there, are obviously the former first overall pick. One of many that they had on the team for years. Connor McDavid there, his first line. They got 2 more years left of him at $12.5 million. What are they going to do with those 2 years? Are they going to be able to capitalize on the best player in the National Hockey League or not? We'll have to wait and see. Zach Hyman is there for another 2 more years as well at 5.5. Vasily Podkolzin there as on the second unit. Leon Draisaitl will be back from his injuries that he had at the end of the year. He's coming in at $14 million, the highest paid on the team. Matthew Savoy is in line for a contract here soon, as he's on the last year of his restricted free agency. And then they have Colton Dock, not Kirby Dock there in the third unit. They also have Dickinson there and Kasperi Kapanen, Matthew Joseph, Matthias Janmark, and Trent Frederick to round things out there for the top unit there. And then you go to the defense, Matthias Ekholm there with Evan Bouchard. Bouchard got some love for all of his offensive prowess he had the last couple of years. Jake Wallman there is still with the team. He re-signed a new 7-year contract. Connor Murphy, they brought him in from Chicago last year. Ryan Shea's another play they brought in this offseason. And Shakir Makamadulin, who they got in the Darnell Nurse trade, is there as the sixth defenseman. Ty Eberson and Stastny there at the end to round out the young defensive core. And then the goaltenders, you're looking at Freddie Anderson, who they brought in from the Carolina Hurricanes, Stanley Cup winning Freddie Anderson on a 1-year, $1 million contract. Tristan Jarry, they still have that contract on the books. He'll be kind of in that trio there with him, Anderson, and Devin Levi rounds out that trio there for the Edmonton Oilers. So they got a little bit of good goaltending depth going into this next couple of years. And we'll see how well that works out for them. They have some decent prospects coming up here soon as well. You know, Isaac Howard's another player that probably is going to get some love this year. Samuel Jennison's a young goaltending prospect. So they have some prospects coming up the ranks here soon for them as well. Obviously, the general manager of the team is Stan Bowman, and the new coach going into this upcoming season is going to be Mike Babcock. But let's see what they did last season. Obviously, that's the noise that's been made a lot this offseason with the Oilers when they brought in Mike Babcock. And so let's look at the record now that the Oilers had last season. They had 41 wins, 30 losses, 11 overtime losses for 93 points, finished second in the Pacific Division, a very weak Pacific Division. And probably is going to be weak again this year with teams like Calgary, Vancouver's going into a full-fledged rebuild probably. Vegas is still there. Obviously, they're still solid, but that's a little bit more open. Ended up sixth in the league in goals for with 282 goals for, which helps when you have the best player in the league on your team, and then 265 goals against, which was 25th out of 32 in the National Hockey League. So they weren't doing a good job keeping that puck out of the net. But they did make it to the playoffs. They lost in the first round to the Anaheim Ducks in a 6-game set. Anaheim, obviously is having their salary cap issues, but they're still going to be a pretty strong team going in this upcoming season, especially if they can get Cutter Gauthier finally signed, which he has not been as the recording of this video. Let's go check the stats from last season. Obviously, leading the way is Connor McDavid. He had 48 goals, 90 assists for 138 points. Just another fantastic season. Did not win the Hart. That went to Nikita Kucherov, but he was up for consideration as usual. Leon Draisaitl had 97 points in 65 games played, 35 goals, 62 assists. They did miss him, especially down the stretch there and in the playoff run. Evan Bouchard had 95 points on the back end with 21 goals and 74 assists. Really solid quarterback power play defenseman there for them. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins continues to still be pretty productive for getting a little bit older there. He's got 56 points, 20 goals, 36 assists. Zach Hyman had 31 goals, 21 assists for 52 points. Matthias Ekholm, 6 goals, 35 assists. Just another solid half a point a game player. Matthew Savoy starting to look like he's showing a lot of promise at 18 goals, 19 assists, 37 points. Vasily Podkolzin, he might finally be finding his stride. He had 19 goals and 18 assists, 37 points. Jack Roslovic and Darnell Nurse round up the top 10 here. They're both gone now. Roslovic obviously signed a free agency with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and Darnell Nurse, his big contract was traded to the San Jose Sharks, as we mentioned earlier. Jake Wallman's still there. Casper Kaplan's still there. So they still have some decent production there, in depth. Good goal scoring. And I don't think that's going to change going into this upcoming season. You look at goaltending they had last year. Connor Ingram's, he's not going to be returning this year as of right now. I think he's still a free agent right now, actually, too. 16 wins, 10 losses. He was kind of the starting goaltender for them towards the end of the season. He had an .899 save percentage, 260 goals against average. Tristan Jarry, who they got in the Pittsburgh deal a couple years ago, when they traded Stuart Skinner there, he had an .857 save percentage and a .386 goals against average. Not very good. Stuart Skinner was traded, like we said, to Pittsburgh earlier in the year. He had a .891 save percentage and 283 goals against. He's now with the Winnipeg Jets for this upcoming season, and Calvin Pickard was there as well. He got some playing time for them. So this is a part where we kind of go over to Puck GM over at our friends Puckpedia, and we kind of look at what they have. As you can see right now, they have just a little bit under $5 million in cap space, not a whole lot of cap space to play with. There's a couple of rumors that they have. As you see, they don't have much draft capital. They only have a second-round pick. They've lost their third. They've lost their fourth. That's now with Nashville, now with Utah, and the first-round pick's now with Chicago. So not a whole lot of draft capital to make a pretty big trade anymore. But, they do have, like I said, they have some prospects they can maybe make a move, and they have some decent players here. So as you can see right now, as the teams, as we went over earlier, the lineup, how it's constructed, Colton Dach's probably going to be up there now. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is still there. This is still a pretty decent lineup. Like we said, they're going to play in a pretty weak division this upcoming year. With Calgary being a little weaker, Vancouver's probably going to be a little bit weaker. Seattle. That Pacific Division is still a little bit open. The Kings, they had their moments last year. Now that they lost Anze Kopitar, we'll see if those continue. The Ducks, they still have a lot of promise, but they have a lot of cap issues they got to get figured out here soon. So those are some teams that definitely are going to still be right there in the tier. And then obviously Vegas is still Vegas. So, they have some good young coming talent. Obviously, Matthew Savoy had a big year. You're probably looking at Isaac Howard having a good year. He won the Hobey Baker a couple of years ago at Michigan State. But there's been some rumors of some free agents that they've been after. One that could possibly they be getting. We're gonna go over here to free agency, and the one big name that they've been linked to has been Vladimir Tarasenko. He had a big year with Minnesota last year, 23 goals, 24 assists for 47 points. He's probably going to get around, 3.4, 3.5. We got to be thinking in terms of a contract. I doubt they would go a 2-year deal, but probably like a 1-year deal for now. Bring him in here. See how he does with a guy like McDavid. Obviously, that takes a bit more of their cap space out of it. But he could definitely fit into that one of those top 6 units. You can maybe move Vasily Podkolzin down, and maybe like Colton Dach ends up riding the bench a little bit. Or him and Matthew Joseph could be switching spots here and there. It doesn't make a 24-man roster, and you got to think Isaac Howard's probably going to be somebody who's going to be up this upcoming season, as we're going to look at his numbers from last year. had a 50-point season in the AHL. He came up for a little bit there in the NHL, only averaged 5 points, but you got to think he's probably somebody who's going to be knocking at the door to try to be making that roster. However, there is a possible trade that could be made, and you guys have to let me know if you like it or not. But we're gonna try to make a trade here. There's one name that's kind of been linked. There's a little bit of a struggle to sign him to a contract right now. We're gonna go to the Ottawa Senators, and we're gonna try to make a trade in which we get Drake Batherson here. Obviously, he's got one more year left at $5 million. He's looking for around $10 to $11 million in his next contract. We'll have to see if that's able to happen with Edmonton or not. Maybe they could bring him down to like a $8.59 million contract, especially if he's playing with Connor McDavid. Maybe that could make some difference, some leeway, and convince him to stay. Obviously, you're trying to convince as much as you can to convince Connor McDavid to stay because you got to be going for it. And this might not be an off-season trade. This might be a more in-season trade, depending on how Ottawa does. But something to maybe we could think about. We're gonna check out and see what we can do in a deal. I think Isaac Howard would have to be the centerpiece of this type of a trade. A nice young prospect, him or Matthew Savoy, and you're probably not trying to trade Savoy if you can help it. So I think they would try to do a Savoy in this type of a deal. Like we said, they don't really have much draft capital, but I think Vasily Podkolzin is another player that could maybe interest them. Or they could maybe even look at like a Ty Emberson. He's a pretty solid young defensive man who's kind of just needs to get that nudge there into the league. So I think I think we'll try to do. I think salary cap wise, it'd probably be more sense to try to trade Paul Colson. He might have found a little bit his stride with Edmonton. Maybe he could take that over to Ottawa and be pretty successful there. And then you're probably looking over at like the defensive, maybe like a defensive prospect, somebody who could be intriguing to them. Asher Barnett there. He had a pretty good year at Michigan. David Lewandowski's a forward prospect, but somebody who definitely could be an interest to them. Rudolph's Berzakalins is definitely another player that could be interesting in this type of a trade. Maybe they make a trade for like a Damien Carfagna. That could be an interesting option. Like I said, Ty Emerson's there as well. Our Turid Lepanainen. Alex Regula is getting a little bit older. Spencer Stastny is still pretty decent player as well. Maybe they could include him. So I think we'll probably do Damien Carfagna there in this type of a deal. Might not be he's a pretty decent puck moving defenseman. Shows a lot of potential, two-way skills. That could definitely be something that puts it over the top. And then if you could maybe even get a contract extension in place for Batherson, that could help. Like I said, I don't really know if they really have any draft capital. Maybe they could include a fourth, potential, prospect, maybe an Aiden Park. He's another player who had a pretty decent year at Michigan, and you trade his rights there to get that deal over the hump. It does kind of make a little bit more of a cap issue, but not much, as you can see. It's only just a little bit around 700,000, but definitely something they could maybe finagle around. This would bring in a Jake Batherson, which I think would be an excellent pickup for them. And you could team them right up there with a Hyman and a McDavid on that first unit, make a really solid first unit. You could have Dickinson, maybe Colton Dock, or even you can maybe do Ryan Nugent-Hopkins up here and play him with the Dickinson. But I think you probably want Tarasenko in the top six there to round up with Draisaitl and them. And then, like I said, you maybe have a little bit of a tandem there with Doc and them. This does maybe mean like you might have to move an Emerson or a Spencer Stastny to make it work salary cap wise. But it's interesting trades. You guys have to let me know what you think in the comments down below if you like that type of a trade. Like I said, something that could be interesting to some teams. if you don't have the space to have a Ty Emerson playing every night or Spencer Stasny playing every night, maybe it's somebody you could consider moving to some other team, just to clear up a little bit of cap space and get it working out construction wise. So maybe we can move an Emerson to a team that might be looking for a young defenseman, and there's one that's kind of looking for a physical defenseman there in the Philadelphia Flyers. So maybe you could trade Ty Emerson there and look over to Philly. They have some decent prospects, to look at. You're probably not getting a whole lot in this type of a trade, but also not really the worst. Maybe you could take on like a prospect, or you could maybe even to kind of make up for the loss of losing Lewandowski. Some guys you could look at Cam Deanan, Spencer Gills there. These guys don't have like huge numbers. Last few years, Danila Kimilov is another player who had a pretty decent year in the AHL. Maybe that's somebody they could look at. Noah Powell as an up and coming prospect. They have some decent prospects. Maybe they could do him for like maybe you could say like a Noah Powell type of trade. Get you a nice little return, and then maybe you can even pick up a pick. Maybe we're looking at like a 4th round pick or something like that in this. You can be able to get some draft capital, and it makes it work out cap wise. Ty Emerson's a pretty solid prospect, I think, or pretty solid defensive player. I think that's a team that Philadelphia would be really interested in. And then you could have Matthew Joseph swapping in and out every day there with the Colton Dock or Trent Frederick, Matthias Janmark. Definitely something they could consider doing. So you guys have to let me know down in the comments below if you like those type of moves. If you don't, let me know what type of moves you guys think they should make. I definitely think this is a team that could compete in the Pacific Division. Do I see them going very far? I don't know. Depending on how well things go with Babcock and that whole situation, we'll have to see. But you still got Connor McDavid, you still got Leon Draisaitl. You still have 2 of the top 5 players in the National Hockey League playing on your team. So that definitely helps and definitely makes its way to work. Maybe if they bring in a Drake Batherson and they can maybe even sign him, like I said, to a new contract. Maybe you could look at like a $9 million contract, maybe like a 9.5 for like on a 6-year deal. Might not be a bad deal to offer him. Maybe he takes a little bit less. Maybe he does like a 9.35 or something like that. Nothing crazy on a 6-year deal, and you can get signed into an extension there. I definitely think he would enjoy playing with McDavid, and maybe this becomes a decent tandem. That's a pretty good first line there with McDavid, Hyman, and Batherson. That's a pretty good line. And do you guys think Tarasenko is somebody they're going to sign? You have to let me know down in the comments below. What do you guys think the Edmonton Oilers are going to do? How do you think they're going to do this season? Love to hear what you guys think. It's going to be a tough, not an extremely tough Pacific Division, but there's definitely teams are getting better in that division for sure. Slowly but surely teams are getting better. So our next video is going to be on the Florida Panthers. I hope to see you guys in that video. If you guys like this video, please consider commenting, sharing, and subscribing. I know the next video with the Florida Panthers, I'll have one of my subscribers is pretty interested in the Florida Panthers. At least they've been commenting on my videos a lot about that team, so I hope to hear from them as well in the next video. But really enjoy doing this. Hope you guys are enjoying this too. Again, comment, share, and subscribe to All Around Hockey, the YouTube channel for the All Around Hockey fan, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.